In the small American town of Dunedin, live two best friends, Gabe and Kylie. The two are together in the backyard of the boys' house, reminiscing about the incredible summer they spent with their faithful pet, a dog called Radar. It all started in the neighboring town, in a prison for the criminally insane. From there, two patients escaped, Dr. Van Hook and his partner in crime, called Dobbins. The two celebrate their escape, but it's not long before the prison alarm is triggered, forcing the pair to take refuge in their old hideout. Meanwhile, in Dunedin, the new chief of police, Joe, goes to the station and is introduced to his new secretary, Ethel, and the mayor, Sebastian. As his first mission, Joe must capture Dr. Van Hook and Dobbins, who have been located nearby. Meanwhile, after arriving at their hideout, the mad scientist goes to the freezer and brings out his greatest invention, Radar, a robot dog, created in the laboratory. She is able to understand human language, transmit messages via cell phone, and has several special abilities. The doctor's goal is to use Radar in his search for fortunes buried off the coast of Florida and thus have enough money for his inventions. That's why, the next day, Dr. Van Hook starts training Radar and hides a Spanish coin in the living room so that she can find it. But instead, the dog escapes through the wall of the house and, with her bionic powers, speeds off across the city. At the same moment, Gabe and Kylie are on their way home from school and the two of them are talking about their plans for the summer ahead. After saying goodbye, Gabe arrives home and tries to distract himself with his video game until his mother, Debbie, returns from work. Unfortunately, she warns that her coffee shop has had no new customers and, since her husband's perishment, the financial situation is becoming more and more critical. Because of this, Debbie tells Gabe that they will have to move to another city in search of new job opportunities. As she had feared, Gabe doesn't like the idea at all, because he doesn't want to leave the city and neither does his best friend, Kylie. Enraged, he goes up to his room, but his mother catches up with him shortly afterwards and, to calm him down, she recalls a story that the boy's father used to tell him before going to sleep. The story is about the legend of Sally, the silver-toothed pirate, who long ago hid a valuable sapphire off the coast of Dunedin. Gabe's great-great-grandfather searched for it all his life, but despite his best efforts, he never found it. Despite being a legend, Gabe believes that the story could be real and, as soon as his mother leaves the room, he contacts Kylie on the computer. The boy invites his friend on a search for the lost jewel, because if he finds it, his mother will have enough money to pay off all her debts. Kylie agrees to the plan and, minutes later, the two of them go looking for the jewel in a forest near the beach. Soon afterwards, Radar also appears and, sensing something precious nearby, she starts digging in front of a tree, finding an old hat inside the hole. Meanwhile, Gabe continues to search for the sapphire, but there is no sign of it anywhere and the boy begins to lose hope. Seeing Gabe's sadness, Radar goes up to him and shows him the hat she's found. The boy is happy when he recognizes the hat from an old photo of his great-great-grandfather and he soon takes a liking to his new four-legged friend. However, it's time to go home and the two agree to meet Radar the next day to continue the search for the sapphire. They say goodbye to the dog, who digs the hole again and finds a mysterious box inside. Minutes later, Gabe returns home, but Radar follows him there. On seeing her son's new pet, Debbie tells him that they can't afford to raise a dog and tells him to take it back to where he found it. However, Radar soon hands over the box that was buried in the sand and, upon inspecting it, Debbie finds nothing less than Sally's pirate sapphire. Mother and son are amazed by this discovery and quickly go to the police station to find out if the jewel is real. When they arrive at the station, the two go to talk to Joe and Ethel, who explain to the rookie policeman about the local legend of this jewel, known as the Sapphire of Savoy. The secretary then calls Artie, the administrator of Dunedin's Pirate Museum, to inspect the jewel more closely. The expert goes there, along with Mayor Sebastian, and to Debbie and Gabe's delight, he confirms that the jewel is legitimate. Everyone around congratulates them on finding the sapphire, but the boy gives all the credit to his new pet, Radar. Later, at Dr. Van Hook's hideout, he tries to track Radar through his computer. Just as Dobbins is watching the local TV program, he sees a statement from Mayor Sebastian announcing that the Sapphire of Savoy has been found. Not only that, but it will be displayed in the town museum, which will be renovated and serve as a tourist attraction in Dunedin. Finally, as a thank you for finding the jewel, the mayor is asking all the residents to visit Debbie's coffee shop, thus guaranteeing her and her son's livelihood. Upon discovering all this, Dr. Van Hook sets up an evil plan. He will go to Dunedin, together with Dobbins, to steal the sapphire and get Radar back. Another day passes, with Gabe and Kylie eating vanilla ice cream in the street with Radar. Kylie believes that this is Radar's favorite flavor and, just then, Gabe receives a message on his cell phone saying, "Yes, I agree with you." The boy finds this message strange and just ignores it, but more of them start arriving on his and Kylie's cell phones. When they realize that it's Radar herself who's sending them, the two friends get scared, but decide to play along and ask her how she's doing it. Then Radar opens a compartment in her body, revealing that she is a bionic dog with robotic parts. Gabe is excited by this information, but Kylie believes that Radar was created by someone else and that, very soon, her owner will come back to take her back. The girl's fear is more real than she realizes, because the creator of Radar has just arrived in Dunedin. He and Dobbins head for the Pirate Museum to look for the bionic dog and the valuable sapphire of Savoy. However, just as they were about to enter the museum, they saw several posters all over the city with their pictures as wanted. Dobbins despairs, but the doctor tells him to pull himself together and, after returning to the car, they decide to look for the current owners of Radar. They go to Debbie's work, where she continues to look after the cafe and its new customers. One of them is Policeman Joe, who has come not only to try one of Debbie's dishes, but also to invite her to dinner. The woman accepts the invitation, but first she needs to find a babysitter to look after Gabe, as she is worried about the news about the prison escapees. Unbeknownst to her, the pair are watching her at that very moment and, when it's time for Debbie to leave, they start following her. Without realizing it, she ends up revealing her address to the two fugitives, who are hiding inside the van. Using a pair of thermal vision binoculars, Dr. Van Hook manages to see through the walls of the house and notices the presence not only of Debbie, but also of her son and Radar. After that, he creates a sleeping pill with his chemicals, to make Gabe and Debbie unconscious and thus capture Radar more easily. Finally, the doctor and his assistant initiate their plan and get out of the car, disguised as a pest control. Dobbins positions a huge ladder towards Gabe's bedroom window, but Radar senses something is wrong and starts growling. Nevertheless, the doctor orders his assistant to climb the ladder and spray the sleeping pill on the boy, but in the middle of the climb, he refuses to continue because he's afraid of heights. To make matters worse, Dobbins no longer wants to climb down the ladder out of fear, despite being less than a meter off the ground. With no time to lose, the doctor sprays the sleeping pill on the man, who falls unconscious in the middle of the lawn. In the meantime, Gabe goes to see what's wrong with Radar and she tells him that her creators are outside, trying to break into the house. Gabe doesn't know what to do, but Radar decides to sort it out herself and goes to the window. Seeing Dr. Van Hook, she activates her heat vision, causing the metal ladder to heat up and burn the man's hand, which also falls to the grass. Realizing that his plan has failed, the doctor decides to retreat before he attracts the attention of the police. The two then drive away and Gabe, who saw everything from the window, congratulates Radar on her courage and names her as part of his family. Later, on the road, Dr. Van Hook and Dobbins go to hide in a remote field and try to relax a bit after this failure. To their surprise, Mayor Sebastian appears nearby and the two try to escape, running towards the sea. However, the mayor reveals that he has been following them since they entered the city and that, instead of reporting them to the police, he has come to make them an advantageous offer regarding the sapphire. Far away, at the police station, Joe asks Ethel to babysit Gabe for the night so that he can take Debbie out to dinner. Having already suspected the policeman's feelings for the young mother, she agrees to look after the boy until they get back. When night falls, Kylie goes to visit Gabe at his house and the two of them try to come up with a plan to keep Radar safe from the bad guys. The girl suggests warning the police, but Gabe knows that if they learn of the existence of a bionic dog, Radar will be taken away for experiments and she will never be seen again. The two continue talking until Ethel arrives at the boy's house to babysit for the night. After Debbie goes to meet him, the secretary decides to invite the two young people to spend the evening playing poker, which doesn't excite them. To escape from this situation, Gabe asks his dog to help them escape from Ethel. In response, Radar triggers one of her secret abilities, sleep gas, which spreads throughout the dining room, causing the old woman to fall asleep on the table. After that, Gabe suggests to Kylie that they go to the museum and hide the sapphire. Without the jewel, the bandits will have no reason to go into town and will leave Radar alone. Kylie agrees and accompanies Gabe and Radar to the museum, without suspecting that Dr. Van Hook and Dobbins are also going there. When they arrive in his van, the doctor tells Dobbins that the mayor has allowed him to enter the museum, so that he can steal the jewel and split its value between them. However, he also reveals that he has no intention of sharing the profits with the mayor and, as soon as he gets the sapphire, he and Dobbins will flee the city with it. With everything explained, the two make their way to the front door of the museum, which the mayor has told them will be unlocked. However, when they get there, the pair realize that he has tricked them and decide to use their own tools to open the door. However, instead of using something more discreet, the men grab a hammer and the doctor orders Dobbins to break the glass in the door. He obeys, but as soon as he makes the move to hit the glass, he hits Dr. Van Hook in the face with the hammer, knocking him unconscious on the floor. At that moment, Gabe and Kylie also arrive at the museum and try to enter through the back door, but it's locked. Fortunately, this is no problem for a bionic dog, and Radar uses its robotic vision to identify the lock's mold. It then creates an artificial key and manages to open the door. The three then enter the museum and start looking for the sapphire, but when they inspect the box where the jewel was, they don't find it there. Seconds later, someone inside the museum approaches and the trio quickly don pirate costumes and pretend to be wax statues. The plan works and one of the security guards, who had stored the jewel elsewhere, appears inside the museum. After the guy leaves, Radar uses her super sharp nose to find the sapphire, which seems to be hidden in the museum's office. The three go there, while in another part of the museum, Dobbins and Dr. Van Hook have managed to get in through one of the windows. In a surprise attack, they knock the security guard unconscious and begin their search for the valuable sapphire. Gabe and Kylie hear a noise nearby and soon suspect that the bandits are also in the museum. They rush to find the jewel and Radar locates it inside the room's safe. Once again, she uses her bionic powers to find the combination that opens the safe. However, time is almost up, as Dr. Van Hook and Dobbins have already discovered that the jewel is not on display in the museum, and the two of them are getting closer and closer to the office. Finally, Radar discovers the combination and, guiding the kids through the messages on their cell phones, they open the safe and find the jewel inside. Despite this, there is nowhere to run and the bandits are getting closer and closer to the room. At the last minute, Radar sends one more message, asking the kids to hug her and remain absolutely silent. They obey and, in a matter of seconds, everyone is invisible thanks to the dog's camouflaging powers. The crooks then arrive at the office and search the safe, but find it completely empty. Faced with Dr. Van Hook's frustration, Kylie lets out a laugh, but luckily for her, the doctor thinks it was Dobbins who laughed in his face and gives him a scolding. After that, the bandits drive off, believing they have failed again, and Radar undoes the camouflage, making them all visible again. Now that they're out of danger, the three of them flee the museum, just as the bandits had returned to their car. Unfortunately, they see the trio fleeing and deduce that it was they who took the sapphire. Dr. Van Hook plans to capture them, but this time he'll be carrying a secret weapon, the Radar remote control. At dawn, Gabe heads off with Kylie for another day at school. However, the two are approached by the doctor, who demands the sapphire and, if they refuse to hand it over, he will deactivate Radar forever with his remote control. With no other choice, the boy hands over his backpack, with the sapphire of Savoy inside. The doctor celebrates his victory and Gabe demands that he leave Radar alone, but in a treacherous act, the villain presses the control button to deactivate the robot dog. To the doctor's misfortune, the remote control doesn't work, because Dobbins had forgotten to change the batteries the day before. Radar seizes this opportunity and fires a laser beam from her eyes, hitting Dobbins' hand, which drops the backpack on the floor. Gabe then picks up his backpack and runs off with his friends, but Dr. Van Hook and Dobbins return to their car and a chase through the streets begins. Nearby, Debbie meets up with Joe, who has already found out about the theft of the sapphire. Shortly afterwards, Mayor Sebastian appears in front of the two of them and, in order to stick to his plan, he tries to convince them not to go after the jewel. However, before they can say any more, the three of them see Gabe, Kylie and Radar fleeing from a van, which is chasing them through the city. Joe and Debbie soon get into the car and, despite Sebastian trying to slow them down, they leave as soon as possible to save the kids. The chase continues and Gabe, along with Kylie and Radar, flee towards the same forest where they found the sapphire. The three believe they have lost the bandits, but it doesn't take long for Dr. Van Hook and Dobbins to appear before them with their van. Desperate, Gabe asks Radar to do something and the dog shows off another of her secret skills, sonic barking. With it, Radar emits a powerful sound wave, which hits the van hard and disables it. Having gotten the upper hand, the trio runs into the forest, but the bandits are right on their tail. Minutes later, Joe and Debbie arrive in the forest and the policeman calls for reinforcements in the neighboring towns. The couple set off in pursuit of the trio, who continue to flee, until Radar starts acting strangely and falls to the ground weakened. Gabe soon realizes that the dog needs to recharge her batteries, but there's no time to lose as the villains continue to pursue them. Radar asks the kids to run away and, even though Gabe refuses to abandon his friend, he is forced to leave her behind. Finally, the villain finds Radar alone in the forest and recharges the remote control to deactivate it once and for all. Gabe watches from afar and begs the villain to spare her, but the doctor doesn't care and presses the button, causing Radar to fall to the ground. After finishing off the poor dog, the two villains go after the kids, without realizing that Joe and Debbie have found Radar. She sends messages to the policeman's cell phone, telling him that she needs to be recharged in order to save Gabe and Kylie. Confused by this message, the policeman and Debbie do as she asks and use an electric charger to energize Radar. However, it's too late, as the villains catch up with Gabe and Kylie on Dunedin Beach and the doctor aims his freeze ray at them. The friends' adventure is about to come to a tragic end, but Radar finally recovers her energy and activates a mechanism in her tail. She turns it into a helicopter propeller and starts flying over the forest in search of her friends. Finally, she finds them being threatened by the doctor and, before he pulls the trigger, Radar fires a laser at his hand, leaving him unarmed. Gabe and Kylie are safe and, soon after, Joe also appears, handcuffs the criminals and takes them to his car. Joe intends to arrest them at the police station, but just as they are about to get into the car, Sebastian appears. He takes advantage of a moment of inattention and grabs Gabe's backpack, along with the freeze ray, and points it in everyone's direction. The mayor then reveals that he had planned to take the sapphire from the beginning and that he only used the doctor and his assistant to achieve this goal. His plan was to use the money obtained from the jewel to leave the city and gain even greater political office. Finally, he runs off with Gabe's backpack, believing that the sapphire is inside. However, as soon as the mayor drives off in his car, Joe calls in police reinforcements and asks them to arrest Sebastian on the way. Gabe also reveals that, before the villains found him on the beach, he had hidden the sapphire in the middle of the forest. Finally, he asks Radar to find it and the dog soon brings the jewel back, while Dr. Van Hook, Dobbins and Mayor Sebastian are arrested for their crimes. A few days later, police officer Joe brings everyone together to honor the town's heroes, Gabe, Kylie and Radar. He presents them with a certificate of bravery and the Sword of Dunedin, as a symbol of the trio's courage. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.